Thursday afternoon, and welcome to a very shortened edition of 580 Sports Talk following a wild Royals loss in their series finale to the Orioles. It's Hunter Dickinson Day. We've got so much to get to and so little time to get to it. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He is Dan Lucero. We are here with you until 6 o'clock today, after what was the longest game of the season, I believe, in terms of just time elapsed for the Kansas City Royals. And despite a valiant comeback effort, they lose 13-10 to the Baltimore Orioles. Despite not having Hunter Dozier in the lineup for the game, he ends up with the final at bat, and it went about how you would expect, even though he was the tying run at the plate with 2 outs. We're going to get to as much as we can in the 5 o'clock hour of the show. I promised yesterday we'd have Rick Peterson on today. Well, because our show is so short, Pistol is actually going to join us tomorrow on the show to talk about the Topeka-Shawnee County Sports Hall of Fame inductions. So Pistol will join us tomorrow. We will talk about Hunter Dickinson committing to KU, the big story of the day. The Chiefs, minutes after we got off the air last night, signing Donovan Smith to a $9 million contract. We'll get to that next hour as well. Playoff roundup, other headlines, all that's coming up. But Dan, the Kansas City Royals are top story, if you will. I'm going to give them a lot of credit because they were down 8-1 and Jordan Lyles was giving up batting practice. And it just felt like, all right, whatever, just pack it in. Last year's team, even the year before that, yeah, they were going to give up. It was going to be over. Game probably would have been over in about 2.5 hours, even without the pitch clock, because the Royals weren't going to fight. This team fought really hard. 8 unanswered runs after they went down 8-1. I give the Austin Cox experience high marks for his Major League debut.
Came in, settled the game down, gave the Royals a chance to make their comeback.
MJ Melendez has been swinging the stick better. Bob Witt had a better game today.
Big hit, go-ahead hit, I believe.
Vinny had a hit again, I believe. He was huge yesterday in the win.
Michael Garcia, Freddie Fermin, first big league dinger.
The young Royals were great today. Truly, they were great.
The other day I said on the final word, enjoy the cool baseball stuff that the Royals do, especially if it's their young foundational guys doing it. And of late, there's been some pretty cool baseball stuff from the likes of Melendez and Witt and Michael Garcia.
Christopher mentions in the comment section on YouTube, 2 3-hour games today, more than 3-hour games, the Royals, and then the Twins and White Sox, I think, just went final. The Twins are going to win that one in extras. We also had a game that took under 2 hours. The Cubs and Nats got done in under 2 hours today. Very funny. It sucks to lose a game like that. It really does, because you fight so hard and then you still can't get over the finish line. But I think there is still more good than bad to take away from this. All these guys you want to be future contributors and current contributors, they played well. They made a big impact. Factor in the game last night when you win 6-0 in a game in which, well, Zach Greinke's really been struggling. You could understand why maybe they wouldn't win that game. I have been very impressed. Honestly, even with a 1-1 record, probably as much as I've been all year with a 2-game stretch for the Royals last night and today.
And truth be told, over the last 10, 12 games, they've actually swung the bats pretty well as a group.
They have.
It's not just Ben Pasquantino. Like they've started to get some contributions. They're scoring over 4.5 runs a game in that stretch since they faced Shohei Ohtani, which I think was that first game of that series in Los Angeles that kicked off that road trip. They've actually had some pretty good offensive performances since then. So it's good to see the offense coming around. It's just a shame the bullpen, which had been solid, really maybe one of the better parts of this team to this point, kind of let down those young hitters who scrapped their way back from an 8-1 deficit to take that lead.
We will talk more Royals coming up a little bit later. Funny, Christopher, correct me. It's actually the Royals series. We had 1 in 2 hours and 2 over 3 hours, but it was accurate for today's games too. We'll talk more Royals coming up next hour. Hunter Dickinson, the Chiefs, our headlines, all that and much more coming up in a 1-hour edition of 580 Sports Talk after the news.
Dear Daddy, dear
the final and only hour of 580 Sports Talk on this Thursday afternoon coming your way. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero are here with you from our 580 studios on Huntoon Hill from the beautiful, scenic, and somewhat damp capital city. Thank you so much for sticking around following Royals baseball to hang out with us this afternoon. Got a bunch to get to. We were almost hoping for a quick game today. We were hoping for a quick game today because we have so much to talk about.
It's the irony of ironies, right?
Right.
Some days, hey, if you're going to chop our show up, go ahead and chop it up nice so we can chill and enjoy the ball game without having to put too much into the content aspect. But today we are overflowing with content, and we've only got an hour to squeeze it into.
So as I mentioned during our little fragment of a segment at the end of the 4 o'clock hour, we originally thought we were going to have Rick Peterson on today for a slightly delayed edition of the Invista Credit Union High School Whip Round. We've moved Pistol to tomorrow because we came on so late. We want to talk about the Topeka Shawnee County Sports Hall of Fame inductions, including his own, plus everything going on in the world of high school sports. So Pistol will join us tomorrow at 4:35 instead. So we will still talk to Pistol. It'll just be a day later and an hour later than normal. Matt Derrick will also join us on tomorrow's show for our Chiefs Insider. Here this hour, we'll get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines momentarily, which pretty much cover the two biggest stories of the day, which are Hunter Dickinson and Donovan Smith. We'll get to both of them in just a moment. We've got some final thoughts on the Royals, the playoff roundup, all that and more coming up in this single hour of 580 Sports Talk today. We would love to get your thoughts on anything Royals, KU, K-State, what the hell? The Chiefs as well. Anything you've got thoughts on, send it our way on our text line. 785-272-9429 is the text line number. Or you can hit us up on YouTube, the channel that we do all of our live streams from, all of our video content. It's called Sports on 580 WIBW. And I want to give a shout out to all y'all because I said yesterday, what if we got to 250 subscribers? Logged in today around noon, 252.
How about that?
So shout out to all you guys who have been subscribing. We've done a lot with this over the course of the last year. Really, at this point, about 6.5 months or so that we've been doing the live streams. But we appreciate you guys hopping on with us every single day. For those of you who have subscribed, if you haven't, well, there's never a bad time to do so. Head to YouTube. The channel's called Sports on 580 WIBW. Hit the subscribe button, and then you will be able to see all of our videos, live streams, all that right on your YouTube homepage. Again, our channel's called Sports on 580 WIBW. All right, we've got a ton to get to. Let's jump right in. Our 580 Sports Talk headlines. The biggest headline of the day, certainly locally and across the entirety of college basketball, the best player to maybe ever have entered the transfer portal, not that it's been around all that long, Hunter Dickinson, 7'1" center from Michigan. He is the newest member of the Kansas Jayhawks. KU sealed the deal. It sounds like last night is actually when Dickinson gave his commitment to KU. He announced it with a video on his social media channels earlier today, but he is headed to Lawrence. He's got 2 years of eligibility left. I don't know that he's going to use both of them, but for at least the 23-24 season, Hunter Dickinson will be a Kansas Jayhawk. For those who aren't entirely familiar with his game, maybe you've heard of him. Maybe you knew he had a podcast. We were making fun of it with Michael Swain on Tuesday's show because his co-host, but that's beside the point. He averaged over 3 years at Michigan. He was a starter for pretty much all of them. 17.2 points a game, 8.4 rebounds a game. For his career, a 36% three-point shooter and 57% from the floor. I know that's a lot of numbers, but they're really good numbers. Last year alone, 18.5 points a game, 9 rebounds, and he shot 42% from three. He's 7'1". He's a former All-American. He was a second-team All-American in 2021 as a freshman. He is a 2-time first-team All-Big Ten player, All-Big Ten defense 2 years ago. Pretty much every honor you could want from an available player Hunter Dickinson had in a tough conference, overrated conference, but a tough conference for a program that had been pretty good until this past year. We remember during his return to public view press conference, Bill Self said one of the things they wanted in the portal, more shooting on the wing, size on the wing, and oh yeah, a big guy who can go get 20 and 10. Well, I just told you Hunter Dickinson as a junior had almost 19 and 9. I think Bill Self might have heard something when he had made that comment at his press conference just a little over a month ago. This is massive. This is absolutely huge. None of the insiders Not nationally, not locally. I mean, Michael Swain, we talk to him every single week, and he is by far the best at covering KU from an inside the program kind of level. He was telling people over at fog.net, like, hey, I'm not even making a prediction. Like, I think it could be Maryland. It's at home. There's a lot of reasons why he might want to stay in the Big Ten, go play 10 minutes from where he grew up. But KU is right in the thick of it. I'm not even going to make a guess. And it ended up KU with the NIL package, which we're not going to get the exact numbers, but they dropped a bag, so to speak, for Hunter Dickinson. The fit in terms of you want to go coach who's going to make sure you're the focal point of a team and you're a big man, go play for Bill Self, duh. And the ability to possibly win a national championship. And that's what Hunter Dickinson said. He said, hey, the appeal of contending for a title, big deal to me. Also said he can't wait to play with DeJuan Harris. I can understand why as a big man. This was the biggest possible target for anyone out of the portal, specifically KU. They built their entire offseason plan around going out and getting Hunter Dickinson, and Bill Self got it done. He has an unreal track record with spring recruiting. And now with the portal, when all these guys are in it in the spring, that has come to the forefront even more. And I don't think you can talk about how big of a deal this is for KU.
When we think of great KU teams, we think of great big men.
Yep.
And we think of big men in the traditional sense. Like there have been like some good KU teams that did not have a traditional center, like the team when Dedrick Lawson was the 5, and last year's team with KJ Adams playing the 5. That's non-traditional 5 men. Dedrick Lawson was tall, but he wasn't a big man in that traditional sense.
Right.
And KJ Lawson, not as tall, but again, not traditionally a big man. But when you think about great KU teams under Bill Self, you can usually attach the big man when you're thinking of the great teams, and you think of guys like Cole Aldrich, when you think of guys like Sasha Khan, when you think of guys like Jeff Withey, when you think of guys like Udoka Azubuike, when you think of guys like David McCormick, those are your traditional big men who can get the ball with the back to their basket and feast and finish on alley-oops, because nobody gets his bigs more easy baskets in his offense than Bill Self. So here's a guy who can do all of those things, plus flash the mid-range and step out behind the college arc and knock down a three-pointer. So you have to guard him in every square inch of the court. And he's athletic enough. He's going to help you on defense. KU was not a good rim-protecting team last year. Not that Hunter Dickinson is Udoka in that regard.
No, certainly not.
But, I mean, number one, who is? And number two, he'll help. He'll be a better solution when it comes to rim protection than anything that KU had last year.
And if you trust Bill Self and his coaching staff, even if Hunter Dickinson is not ever going to be Udoka or even close to that as a rim protector, he'll be better than he was at Michigan.
Yeah, it's not, because it's not like he's just completely immobile. He's not a stiff, right? Like he can get from side to side. He can move. He can score off the bounce, even if there's a center that's trying to guard him, a bigger, more plodding guy. He can go by somebody with the handle at 7'1". This is as skilled a player as there is in the country, and he's going to be a Kansas Jayhawk next year. And it's not a mistake that the odds for KU winning the national championship are now the second shortest of any team in the country, behind only Duke. This is a player that makes a massive difference. It takes KU from the probable Big 12 favorite to the overwhelming Big 12 favorite for next season, and a team where you're talking about this is a Final Four team. And you don't do that every year. I mean, you take it for granted at a place like Kansas, but that's not the case. That's not usually how it works every year, even at Kansas. This is a Final Four team as constructed around a guy like Hunter Dickinson. They could still stand to add some more shooting. I think they've got one scholarship left. They had two open when Kyle Cuff hit the transfer portal yesterday. So I believe they've got one more scholarship remaining. I'd be very surprised if that didn't go to another veteran out of the portal who can make some shots, who can help to spread the floor, maybe play the 2 guard. But Hunter Dickinson is a big, big deal. This was the best player in the portal. This is a grand slam home run in Bill Self's offense. He is going to be so productive. He is going to be an All-American. He is going to be a front runner. He'll be the preseason Big 12 player of the year. Like, he is that guy. And in a Bill Self offense, he is going to be a menace.
So KU this year has 12 scholarships to play with. That, instead of the normal 13, is because of the self-imposed sanctions that KU placed on itself. If you remember back to the beginning of this past season, Bill Self took the 4-game self-imposed suspension. They did a couple of other things that in the grand scheme of things probably aren't all that important. And then they had 3 scholarship reductions, 1 for each of the next 3 years. So instead of 13, they've got 12 scholarships to work with. They've got 4 players back from last year. They've got 3 incoming transfers so far, now with Hunter Dickinson, Nick Timberlake, as well as Arterio Morris, and they've got a 4-man recruiting class. There is a lot of chatter. We talked about this with Michael on Tuesday's show, that they are interested in Mackenzie Mbako, who was originally committed to Duke, 5-star recruit, top 10 player in the country, decommitted from Duke when they had some transfer movement, and apparently KU thinks they're in a good spot for him. If it just stays as is, or maybe they add a depth piece, a shooter specialist, think of, another, 2 or 3-man shooter, someone like that. I think there's a lot of creative things KU can already do with its rotation. You're probably seeing Dickinson starting at the 5, obviously, Harris at the 1, obviously. And I think you probably see KJ at the 4, Timberlake at the 3. I guess Arterio Morris is your 2-man, and Elmarco Jackson, who's a top 20 recruit in the country now, in the most recently updated recruiting rankings. He's probably your super 6-man. I mean, he's still probably playing 20, 25 minutes a game. He'll just start off the bench. If you add Mbako, then you have essentially 8 guys who all, to a degree, deserve starting time. I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe one of the other freshmen might say, hey, I'm going to reopen my recruitment at that point, but that's so far down the line, not worth getting into the weeds there. My overall point by saying all this is, 1, KU is going to have a lot of fun pieces that in theory should work really well together. Like there's been, I know, talk among KU fans about love KJ Adams, love what he brings. We haven't seen a lot of him off the dribble, and we really haven't seen him shoot outside of about 7 feet ever, at least not well. So putting him at the 4 in the Big 12, does that make a lot of sense? I don't know, but Bill Self trusts him.
And who's better at running an offense with 2 bigs than Bill Self?
Absolutely nobody. And KJ's got experience at the 5. He's going to play the 4. Hunter Dickinson is a 5 who can step out and shoot the 3. You don't think they're going to get creative as all hell with that pairing and do all sorts of fun things switching those 2? No, it could be phenomenal. So this looks like a great roster going into next year. I'm not going to say championship or bust because it's the NCAA tournament and anything can happen, but this team should be favored by most and everybody to get to a Final Four. Absolutely should be. And they've got the pieces to get there. Shout out to Bill Self because he did a phenomenal job putting this together. Landing Dickinson was huge. I know Maryland really wanted him. Villanova really wanted him. And apparently Villanova's head NIL guy is literally Jay Wright. I did not know that until this recruitment.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Apparently that's like his thing. Like he himself calls donors and other people, boosters and whatnot.
I bet he's really good at that.
Like, hey, it's me, the guy who won 2 national titles in the last decade. Oh, yeah.
Would you like to turn on your money cannon so that we may have more good basketball players?
Who, by all accounts, is also like the most personable, nicest guy in the sport. Yeah, I would. If I had billions, I'd give him money too. And then Kentucky was interested too, although that fit would have been atrocious. That would not have gone well.
No.
If Hunter Dickinson wanted to become an NBA big man.
Hunter Dickinson just setting screens so they can run whatever 5-star guards they got off of floppy sets like it's 1987.
Yeah, that would have been gross. So love the fit. I know there are folks who don't like Hunter Dickinson because he's, I will use the word prickly. Put an L in there. Prickly. Likes to talk.
Oh, yeah. He's going to be one of the most hated guys in the Big 12 in 9 other venues. 100%.
Yeah. It's going to get loud at Bramlage Coliseum and Hilton Coliseum.
Yeah.
It is going to be really loud and in the ways you would expect for him particularly. He had a bit where he wore a ski mask to a game last year.
Yeah.
I would think there is some sort of agreement in place like, hey, be you. We want your personality, but you can't be a complete jerk. Like, you need to tone it down from an 11 to a 10. But Bill Self was also in his commitment video. Like, He flew out to Michigan, I believe it was, met with him, and they filmed this video last night.
Yeah.
Like, Self's all in. So if he's all in, I'm all in. Huge for KU. That's your big story of the day?
That is your big story of the day. Here's your second biggest story of the day, which is actually your biggest story from yesterday afternoon. The Kansas City Chiefs have a new left tackle. This kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah, big time.
Like, and I feel like that undersells just how out of nowhere the Donovan Smith signing is. The Chiefs have reportedly agreed to terms with Donovan Smith, former tackle of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, on a one-year deal that's going to be worth $9 million. Now, Donovan Smith, over the course of his career, he has been in the league for 8 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
He has started 124 of a possible 130 games. Started just 13 games last season, dealing with a bicep injury that made it really difficult to sustain his previous standard of play. Last year, he got flagged for holding 7 times in his 13 starts. That's not really what you want.
No.
So there are a lot of Buccaneers fans who, when the Buccaneers decided they weren't going to bring Donovan Smith back, weren't exactly sad to see that Donovan Smith wasn't going to come back. That being said, he played to a high enough standard to protect the blind side for Tom Brady in a Super Bowl championship year in 2020, and has played at a high enough standard to, again, start 124 of 130 games since his rookie year in 2015. He has been exclusively a left tackle, and according to all published reports on Twitter or elsewhere, that is how the Chiefs view him, that he will step in and play on the left side of the Chiefs' offensive line, which bumps previous free agent signing, Jawan Taylor, back to his natural position of right tackle. So why the smokescreen? Why, when the Chiefs handed out the $80 million to Jawan Taylor, did they insist he was the left tackle?
That's a great question. And I had 2 thoughts to that point. One is, hey, we have this opportunity. We weren't expecting it. Are you okay? I mean, it's a 1-year deal for Smith. It's not like it's a long-term thing. Like, we're going to bump you back to right tackle, but that's not, I mean, he got the money regardless. He got left tackle money anyway.
Yeah.
But this, eventually that's going to go back to being your spot. Or when they first signed him, do you know who Gene Radchak is?
I do not.
Gene Radchak is a military commander and a teacher in the famed 1997 Paul Verhoeven movie Starship Troopers. Okay. And he puts Johnny Rico in command of this unit at one point and says, "You're it until you're dead or I find someone better." Was that the Jawan Taylor thing? Like, hey, you're our left tackle. Unless we find another left tackle, then you're our right tackle. I mean, in terms of just what the alignment looks like, if Donovan Smith, who at times has been great, some iffy moments in his 8-year career, but at times has been truly great. And he was in that Super Bowl, by the way. If he's your weak link, you've got a top 1 offensive line in the NFL. Easily with the rest of that group. I can't imagine there's hard feelings, but it does seem a little weird. The timing is weird. So
we spent the offseason assuming, especially after Taylor was signed, that he was going to be the left tackle because that's what Brett Veach said, and that's what Jawan Taylor said he was told, and that there would be a competition at right tackle between Lucas Niang and whoever the Chiefs drafted. That was what we assumed all along. Mm-hmm. And they drafted Wanya Morris last weekend, and okay, they've got their 3 tackles. Maybe they'll bring in a veteran swing guy to be their 4th tackle just in case of emergency, but also in the past when they've needed, when like Orlando Brown Jr. like tweaked something, they slid Joe Tooney over to left tackle and dropped Nick Allegretti in. So maybe they feel okay with 3 tackles and maybe having both Tooney and Darian Kennard in swing offensive line roles. So this is completely out of the blue, but I think it also follows in the sense of you've got a guy in Taylor who's new to your system and doesn't have that left tackle experience. You have a rookie in Wanya Morris who has, I think, immense potential, but still has some technique things he's got to work through. You have Lucas Niang, who obviously the Chiefs regarded highly enough at one time, but has had trouble staying healthy. Now you add another experienced tackle to that mix. It's a 1-year deal. It's short term. I don't know what it would cost him to walk away from it, even in like camp, if they decided, maybe, hey, I would be surprised. You've seen guys brought in on like 1-year, $2 million deals that don't make teams.
Yeah.
But 1 year for $9 million suggests they want to keep him around. I'd be surprised if they didn't, but it's only 1 year. They can walk away. They can not play him and then walk away from it if it doesn't work out. I think Robert Mays has it exactly right. Robert Mays of The Athletic. He tweeted this, and I'm paraphrasing it, but he himself was paraphrasing what a league executive told The Athletic earlier this year when they were talking about the Chiefs and their roster building. They just need to find 5.
Yep.
They just got to get 5 guys together that function well enough to keep Patrick Mahomes upright for long enough for him to do what he does. And as long as they got 5, they're going to be just fine. In fact, they're going to be better than fine because that's how good Patrick Mahomes is.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is volume. The idea is have more bodies in the room that you feel like we can plug in and we can be covered in case of injury. We can be covered in case of all these different scenarios. We can be covered if Juwan Taylor just isn't a left tackle. Like some guys, they're better off on the right side. Maybe Juwan Taylor's one of those. Maybe Lucas Niang can't really play. Maybe Wanye Morris is going to need a year. You're set now in all of those scenarios because you have Donovan Smith in the room. You plug him in at left tackle. You keep Juwan Taylor where he's comfortable. And now on paper, you go left to right and feel good about that group where you don't have any question marks. You don't have any, well, if this happens, then we're in good shape. This is now, we're in good shape. We are going to cobble together. They've got 8 guys they probably feel like they could put out on the field right now and be, when you include Nick Allegretti, who's a veteran swing guy who's been in the organization. They feel like they got 8 linemen right now that they can put on the field and that they can do the job. And the job is keep 15 clean. And as long as the Chiefs do that, they're going to be awesome. Like, I really think that is the mindset that the Chiefs have taken forward, is as long as we keep 15 upright long enough for him to do what he does, we are going to win a lot of football games, and we're going to be standing at the end.
The guaranteed money isn't out yet. Once the deal is signed, official and all that, and the Chiefs make it an official move, we'll know what the guarantee is for Donovan Smith. This doesn't necessarily mean anything, but I did find it interesting when looking at the list of offensive tackle salaries. In terms of average value per year, Donovan Smith is getting more on his 1-year deal than Andrew Wiley signed for with Washington, which I just found interesting. Now, Wiley got a multi-year deal. He got a 3-year contract, follows EB, get it. He got 3 years, $24 million. That's $8 million a year. I don't know exactly off the top of my head what his guarantee is. Smith got more than that. Like, I'm not expecting it to be a fully guaranteed $9 million, but this isn't a flyer. Like, this isn't a competition signing. This is, no, you're playing. Like, you are in the roster. You are on that starting 22 list. And last year, I was looking at his PFF grades. Last year, if you look at overall grades, and I know that PFF is just 1-2, I know. But how else do you grade offensive linemen? Like, there are no stats for offensive linemen, right? Except holding numbers.
It's about as good as we've got.
Last year was his worst cumulative graded year of his 8-year career. However, it was actually his 4th best, above average, pass blocking year. It was actually a very good pass blocking year for him. His run blocking really suffered. And dealing with run
biceps injury?
What do you need to do?
Power.
You punch, power, downhill. Yeah, if your freaking arm isn't working, I can understand why maybe you can't generate a lot of that push up front. It was the worst run block grade of his career, which you'd like to be able to run the ball. I get that. But you know who's really good at blocking for the run? The 3 guys who will be next to him to the right. Like, this seems like it makes a lot of sense. Really, the biggest talking point about this is it came out of nowhere. Like, this was not even on our radar. I feel like at one point this offseason, I think it was you actually, Dan, somebody mentioned the name. Like, we were just talking about what's the option going to be, like going into the start of free agency on March 14th or 15th. And it ended up being Juwan Taylor. And okay, great. That's perfect fit. Love that. He's going to be left tackle. Awesome. Don't need to worry about that. But aside from a brief mention in passing, the name Donovan Smith never even came up. So I like the signing and I love the depth. And now Wanye Morris, if there's things you need to work out with him, you want him to be your future right tackle. You want Taylor to move to left, or hell, Wanye Morris played some left. I mean, he can play on either side of the line. Maybe he's your future left tackle. I don't know what the situation will be in 24, 25, 26, but for right now, this is shaping up to be at the bare minimum, absolute worst case scenario on paper, a top 5 offensive line in the NFL. And if you have that, you're going to win because of who your quarterback is.
And no setback from last year's line, right? Because you had Orlando Brown Jr. play at a Pro Bowl level, and you had Andrew Wiley as kind of the weak link, but still played well enough, especially in the playoffs and the Super Bowl, to earn a multi-year deal elsewhere. If you are of the school of thought, and I think this is a school of thought that is more pervasive as we go along, that left tackle, right tackle matter, the distinction matters less than maybe it used to. That blindside distinction doesn't matter as much because of just the way modern offenses are. You just don't have as much guy dropping back with his back turned to that side.
Exactly.
Or, coming from under center and dropping back and not looking, and wham, here comes Lawrence Taylor to snap your leg into splinters. Like that's not what the league is anymore. It's more everything is coming at you. So you just gotta you gotta be solid. You gotta have one of those guys who's real good. And if you have one of those guys who's just average, Donovan Smith, I think, can be average. At a bare minimum, he can match Andrew Wiley's level of performance. Jawan Taylor can match Orlando Brown Jr.'s level of performance. And so whether those guys are on the left or the right side, it might be a distinction without a difference in the Chiefs offense.
I think, one, this is a good signing in general. I think he will be better next year than he was this past season. And two, it always helps to have a good guard playing inside of your tackle. Unless you have a truly elite next, you've got a Lane Johnson or a younger David Bakhtiari or a Trent Williams, they will always be helped by having a good player to their right or left shoulder. Joe Thuney's among the very best guards in the NFL. That's going to help out Donovan Smith a ton going forward. So I love the move for the Chiefs. I was shocked. I had my phone out. I was just about to head home yesterday after the show, and I thought, Chiefs signed Donovan Smith. What the heck? All right. Sure. I'll happily take that. So big news for the Chiefs. We're going to take a quick timeout here on 580 Sports Talk. Real quick break. We've got other headlines to get to. We got to the two biggest storylines of the day. There's plenty of other stuff going on, including some news about the Chiefs' opponent for their Germany game this year. We'll get to that. Some other headlines. We'll get to some Royals thoughts in a little bit as well. All coming up on a very short but jam-packed edition of 580 Sports Talk.
Sometime.
On this shortened Thursday edition of 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Dan here with you. Following a tough, albeit fun, Royals loss today to the Baltimore Orioles. We've got more of our 580 Sports Talk headlines to get to after getting through the two biggest pieces of news for the day. And before we jump into our playoff roundup for the day, I wanted to get you the info I teased right before the commercial break. And that is that we know who the Chiefs' opponent for their game in Germany will be this year. It will be the Kansas City Chiefs against the Chicago Bears. There's also going to be another game over there. The Patriots will be playing against, I got to go check who they're playing. But regardless, Saints. It'll be Patriots-Saints. But according to Bild, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, B-I-L-D, it's a German newspaper, they made the official report today that it will be Bears-Chiefs for one of the two games overseas. One of them will be on November 12th. One will be on November 19th. We do not know which one will be which yet, but that is who the Chiefs will be playing overseas. That is a dream scenario for the NFL, right? To have the biggest name in American sports, and as football becomes more popular worldwide, and it's already quite popular in Germany, one of the biggest worldwide sports names, as well as on the other side for the Bears, a guy who the NFL is certainly hoping ascends to true superstar status in Justin Fields, who at the very least is fun to watch. There's no doubt about that. So while the Bears probably won't be all that great next year, I think it's a good quarterback matchup, brand name matchup. If you've been a football fan for a long time over there, you might be a fan of the Chicago Bears, for example. So very cool to note, but the Chiefs will be in Germany for one of their 9 home games this year. It does count as a Chiefs home game, and they'll be playing it against the Chicago Bears.
Let's keep the headlines, so to speak, rolling on this shortened edition of 580 Sports Talk. And let's go ahead and get right into this one. We have got ourselves a gambling scandal.
Yeah, we do.
In SEC baseball. And it has cost head coach Brad Bohannon of the Alabama Crimson Tide his job. Now, earlier this week on the program, one of our headlines was a little tidbit of information that the state of Ohio had halted betting on Alabama baseball games because there had been some interesting activity surrounding the Crimson Tide's weekend games against LSU last weekend, particularly on Friday when 2 large wagers came in on LSU to defeat Alabama. LSU did beat Alabama that day, 8-6. Although LSU jumped out to a big lead, Alabama rallied, but the Tigers took home an 8-6 win, making that better very happy, certainly. But there were 2 very large wagers, and both of them had been placed at the sports book that is at Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati, Ohio. That was all we knew until this morning when Alabama fired their baseball coach, which is not a thing that typically happens with 2 weeks left in the regular season.
No.
Well, wasn't hard to draw a line to connect point A to point B. And as it happens, there had been an investigation into the gambling activity surrounding that Alabama LSU game. And what it came to find was that the person who placed the bets on LSU to win at the Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati at the sportsbook was communicating with Brad Bohannon, the coach of Alabama, at the time he was making the bets. Why would that be such a curious thing to know? Well, if you follow college baseball, you are perhaps aware that weekend series, 3 games, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You roll out your best starting pitcher in the opener every week. Your Friday starter. That is the terminology in college baseball. Every school's got their Friday guy. Alabama's Friday guy is Luke Holman, and he's pretty good. I looked at his numbers. He got an ERA in the 3s. I think his whip is below 1.
Wow.
Luke Holman's a dude, and that's a pretty tantalizing pitching matchup on a Friday in the SEC. Alabama and LSU, Luke Holman against Paul Skeens, who might go number 1 or number 2 in the draft. Pretty tasty pitching matchup in that game. Luke Holman woke up on Friday morning with a stiff back, and he was scratched from his Friday start. That was not made public until a few hours before the game. But you know who might have known that more than a few hours before the game? Luke Holman's coach.
Yep.
And so, again, connect those dots. It's not hard to see what might have happened here. What is hard to see is how you could be so stupid. To what end does Brad Bohannon think this is going to benefit him? How does he think he's going to get away with this? The gambling industry is so regulated.
Yep.
Your activity on those apps, your activity in those sports books is more regulated and monitored than you can possibly imagine. It's how all those NFL players end up getting suspended because they know you're on your phone at the team facility. They can geotag you, and they know exactly where you are, or they know who you are and what it is that you're betting on. So you can't get away with this stuff. How did they think they were going to get away with that?
I don't know. And it's just such an odd situation to me. Like, there's no way you can get away with this. And also, like, I imagine he was in for a cut of this, because otherwise I don't know why you would do it. But I mean, there's got to be a more undercover, covert way to do this, but B, don't do it in the first place, man. It's just, I mean, it's gross, obviously, and he deserved to get fired. But
so there's not typically a lot of action taken on college baseball.
No.
Like, FanDuel said they did not take a single bet on that LSU Alabama.
Not
game.
a single one?
Not a single bet. Other national sports books reported minimal betting on the game. But there was the significant bet, two of them. One was straight bet, one part of a parlay that were placed at that sports book in Cincinnati, which, by the way, is just off of Pete Rose Way.
Fitting.
Very fitting. There were also suspicious bets made in Indiana, and Indiana has halted betting on Alabama baseball and instructed sports books to refund any futures wagers on the Crimson Tide.
New Jersey as well, I think.
Yep, New Jersey and the Ohio Casino Control Commission was the first to halt all betting on college baseball games involving Alabama. So, like we talked about the other day when we brought up this story, if you're involved in this, you have to. If sports betting is going to be more available than just showing up in Vegas and doing it, because kind of the way it used to be. Like, there were some places that it was legal, but mostly it was Vegas. And if it was going to be more widespread and the kind of thing you could do are we at a point now where it's more states than not have legalized it?
I think so.
I think we're close.
I believe we are, either online or in person. I think you are correct, Dan.
And if we're at the point now where it is easy enough to just do it from your computer or from your phone, you don't actually have to go and be physically present at a sports book to make bets, then obviously this has to be regulated to the hilt. Otherwise, the whole enterprise falls apart. It has to be like this. And how you would not think it would be like this if you were the coach of a Division I baseball program, to call your buddy and say, hey, I got a hot tip for you. My ace isn't going to pitch today. You should go bet on our opponent because they've got the number one pick in the draft, and we're gonna have to start a dude I haven't started in 2 months. He's gonna kick our butts. So hey, go make some money on us today.
It's either 30 or 31 states that have it legalized, either online and or in person. Ohio is one where you can bet any sort of way, online or at an in-person casino. I mean, this is being dumb. Like, you're going to get caught. Absolutely. I don't know, man. I'm at a loss for how stupid this was. Also, like, were they just texting? Were they on the phone?
I don't know if they were texting or calling. We have a texter from the 785 who asked, is it possible he didn't know the person he was talking to was gambling at the time? I mean, it strains credulity,
yeah,
I think.
Theoretically, but realistically, I don't think so.
Yeah, like, why would he have gone and placed such a big wager on his buddy's team to lose?
Can you imagine being some random guy in like in Kansas? Like, if you drive over to the Hollywood casino and you're like, man, I've had a few and I'm gonna just place a bet on something. Give me LSU college baseball. Why not? Well, I can't wait for the College World Series. Sure. And then you get a call. It's like, hi, we have some questions for you about this wager you just placed. Right. Like, well, can you imagine that?
Think about how big the wager has to be. I mean, probably the fact that there was a wager at all. Like, again, the national sports books were not taking a lot of action on this game. So if all of a sudden in Ohio there is a substantial bet of any kind on an SEC baseball game where there is not typically a great deal of interest in SEC baseball, particularly regular season SEC baseball, yeah, that's going to raise some red flags. And the technology exists to root out the causes for those red flags. So, yes, this all appears to be very stupid. Also, the investigation did not reveal any connection to any Alabama players. This appears to be the head coach.
Good.
and just the head coach trying to make his buddy rich.
That's really stupid, man. Oh, my God. Yeah, I mean, I can't get over the fact that FanDuel didn't take a single bet on this.
Not one.
That's crazy. It's in, I think, every state that has legal online gaming, FanDuel is there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe they're in Arkansas, actually. I was reading about that. Kind of a weird setup there. But anyway, almost every state, FanDuel is present there. They didn't pick a single one.
No. Like, if I go to FanDuel right now and I click on baseball, it's going to obviously take me to the Major League page first. But I can click on NCAA baseball, and I could, if I wanted, make a money line wager on Ole Miss, Missouri tonight, or North Carolina State, Notre Dame tonight.
And no one did.
Or a future bet, on the College World Series.
Incredible. I bet there's going to be action now on Alabama or against Alabama, at least in other states. Holy smokes, that is unbelievable. We got to get to a quick timeout here. We've got another break to get to. When we come back, we'll get you a real quick playoff roundup going into the evening here on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Dan here with you on 580 Sports Talk. Shortened edition of the show due to Royals baseball today. Real quick, before we get to a final word, let's get to a playoff roundup.
Playoffs?
Not a whole lot of action in the NBA last night. Just one more game tonight. Some fun hockey last night, though. I was getting into that Oilers-Kings game. Apparently, it is bad to score 4 goals in one game as one player.
Yes. Dallas lost despite 4 goals from Joe Pavelski 2 nights ago. And last night, the Edmonton Oilers lost despite 4 goals from Leon Draisaitl as Vegas outscored the Oilers 6-4 in that game 1 of that Western Conference semifinal. The Eastern Conference semi game 1 last night, New Jersey Devils came out a little flat after their long 7-game series against the New York Rangers. Carolina Hurricanes were winners in that one 5-1. Tonight in the NHL, Florida and Seattle look for 2-0 series leads against Toronto and Dallas, respectively. In the NBA last night, the Philadelphia 76ers returned MVP center Joel Embiid and then got 30-pieced by the Boston Celtics. And the only question I have for the 73 people who voted for Joel Embiid in the MVP balloting is, really? That's Joel's MVP, huh?
The unfortunate thing for Philly is they are not going to have a fully healthy Joel Embiid for this series, which sucks.
I trolling aside, MVP gripe aside, I do feel badly or feel bad that Joel Embiid can't be 100% of himself because he's a hell of a player. And it seemed pretty obvious that he's rushing himself back from this injury. And he did. He looked like a shell of himself, just falling down at the barest touch. I don't make fun of him for that because I think he's been told to do that.
I think so too.
But, when he's doing it, it's a sign that he's not healthy. Like, his body is just not cooperating. And they're almost better off with, they won game one without him.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't think they can win the series without him, but I don't know if they can win it with him. The way that he looked and the way the team kind of looked without him, a diminished version of him last night. So that series is even. Boston and Philly, 1 game apiece. Game 2 tonight in the West between the Lakers and the Warriors. I think the Warriors are going to drop an anvil on the Lakers tonight.
Drop an anvil on them. I've got a little action on this game.
Okay.
A couple different player props. That's such a big thing in the NBA. Betting on the NBA is the player props more than any other sport, I think. I'm going to go with under on points for Anthony Davis. I know he was incredible in game 1 of the series. He played 44 minutes in game 1. And his point totals in the playoffs have every game gone up, high total, down, low total. Every single one, it has zigzagged back and forth. I think he's going to drop down a little bit tonight. He's not going to be unstoppable like he was the other night. So I've got under 26.5 points for Anthony Davis tonight. Also, Jared Vanderbilt, over 12.5 points, rebounds, and assists combined. He's the Curry stopper, so he's going to be on the floor a bunch.
Yeah, he did. He played Curry pretty effectively. He can't shoot, but he can rebound his butt off.
Yeah, he can't. No, he can't shoot one bit. They kept kicking to him in the corner. I had the same bet, one number lower the other night. So I'm sitting on my couch rooting for Jared Vanderbilt, and I think my wife thought I was going insane.
He made that corner 3, and then he did like the D'Angelo Russell ice water in the veins thing.
He had
you don't get to do that. You're a 28% 3-point shooter.
Like 4 or 5 opportunities unguarded from the corner and made one of them. I thought, okay, maybe drive next time. Maybe drive inside. That'll do it for our shortened hour of 580 Sports Talk. We're going to come on back. We'll get you a final word and get you ready for Friday's show coming up after this.
John Deere Compact.
In conclusion, you better wrap it up.
This has been a very short and very quickly moving edition of 580 Sports Talk following Royals Orioles today. We will be back tomorrow, full show coming your way, plus overtime tomorrow from 3 until 6 as we get ready for the weekend set between the Royals and the A's. Matt Derrick will join us for our Chiefs Insider. Plus, we will have Rick Peterson on the show for a day-delayed edition of the Invista Credit Union High School Whip Round. We'll talk more Chiefs, Royals, college hoops, all that coming up tomorrow. from 3 to 6 on 580 Sports Talk. But before we get there, Dan, let's get to a final word.
Final word from me. Maybe you haven't noticed, and if you've turned away from Royals baseball, I don't blame you entirely. They've been a tough watch, but in the last dozen or so games, they started to swing the bats pretty well. They had a pretty good offensive series against the Baltimore Orioles here this week. It's been encouraging to see guys like MJ Melendez and Bobby Witt Jr. turn the bats over. Michael Garcia has been solid since his call-up. And there's a little bit more energy on the diamond with him out there and not with Hunter Dozier out there, which what a surprise that is. Nick Pratto has had some good results as well. So keep watching those young guys. Keep having faith in those young guys. It was a slow start for Witt last year. If you remember, he had an awful April, and then he really kicked it into gear starting in May. I wouldn't be surprised if these young guys do the same. If they can join Vinny Pasquantino, who's still been raking, then there are some brighter days to come for that Royals offense.
I would love to do a final word on the Royals and how they've been swinging it the last couple of days, or on the Chiefs and the fact that they now have a great option to fill their final tackle spot in a way completely different than any of us expected. But my final word today, it's about the Kansas Jayhawks. It is about Hunter Dickinson. KU built so much of its offseason plan around getting Hunter Dickinson to Lawrence. Whether it's for 1 year or he uses both, we know Bill Self loves big men. Guys who are established, guys who can score, who can rebound, who have at least a little bit of room to grow on defense. Yeah, that sounds like the perfect fit for a Bill Self team. Self said he wanted a guy who can get him 20 and 10 in the post. Last year, Hunter Dickinson got almost 19 and 9. Sounds like a guy playing for Bill Self who can definitely get to that 20 and 10 threshold. Biggest possible fish in a gigantic pond. KU able to get him hook, line, and sinker. What a win for KU in the portal. That does it for 580 Sports Talk. We'll be back with you tomorrow from 3 until 6 with plenty to get to. For Dan Lucero, I'm Brendan Drzezinski. We'll talk to you then on 580 WIBW.